to our series of interviews with Euro members and friends across the world, finding out how they're coping with the coronavirus pandemic. Today's interview is with Stuart McAlister of Relocation Group based in Hungary. I recorded this interview with him yesterday, which was the 3rd of April. So again, with all of the interviews, just bear in mind, with this very fast-moving situation, some of what you're about to hear may have become superseded by new news.
Hello and welcome back to our series of interviews with Euro members across the world as we all grapple with the coronavirus pandemic. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to Stuart McAlister. Stuart McAlister is the CEO of Relocation based in Hungary. I've been lucky enough to know Stuart for a number of years and really lucky to have worked with him in his capacity as Vice President of Euro. So he is somebody who knows the ins and outs and in-depths of our industry. So it's really nice to see you, Stuart. Thank you for doing this. How are you and what's happening in Hungary?
Hi, Dom. Thanks very much. It's lovely to be here. I've been enjoying the videos that you've so far published. It's been really great to see what's going on with everybody around the world. A lot of positivity I'm hearing. I think that what you and Tad and the team are doing, and the board, the executive group are doing is amazing, keeping us all ticking over. I mean, it's now a lot more than just sort of the disappointment, the missing out of the conference in Seville. I mean, I'm still riding the wave of having actually, because as the strategic advisor, I was allowed to go to the board meeting, which you were not.
No,
for keeping the royal family separated.
Correct.
So, I mean, my wife and I are we're still riding the wave because we got to travel to a beautiful location for 5 days before the lockdown took place. So I'm grateful for that opportunity.
I mean, and just because did you leave on the Sunday or the Monday? Because I know Spain. I mean, you were right on the cusp of leaving Seville.
Right. Yeah. We because Tad was saying, "Oh, leave on Friday, get a different flight." And we went, no,
Seville,
we'll be
beautiful.
fine.
Yeah.
And we did manage to get out on the Sunday.
Okay.
The airport was quite busy, and it was definitely looking a little bit like Last Chance Saloon.
Really, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I can link into that. So fundamentally, yeah, we're in some form of lockdown. It was all presented by decree from our Prime Minister as being it's going to be some kind of draconian situation with the police and the military controlling and policing this particular lockdown. It's been almost worryingly lax, in my personal opinion.
Interesting, really.
In that there are, plenty of cars in the streets. Some people are going somewhere. Okay, I accept it's probably they're going to and from work, and there may be people, if you have an essential job that cannot be done at home, you are permitted to go to work. Obviously, somehow those folk have to maintain social distancing. We are allowed to go to the supermarket, the pharmacy, other sort of essential shopping trips. But it's the only limitation is that from 9 to 12 is supposed to be limited for the over 65s.
Right.
During which time the rest of us are supposed to stay indoors and let and also if there was some clarification from the government, but because unfortunately the old age pensioners were seeing us as an opportunity for a social outing, and the government had to provide clarification that no, it's not an invitation. What you should be doing is trying to get friends, relatives, or neighbors to shop for you. And only in the event that you have no alternative should you venture out on your own. And obviously, that's definitely something that we would agree with. But it rather worryingly, it also allows for funerals, weddings, for small family groups.
And have they put numbers on, like maximum numbers on events like that?
No, small tight family groups.
Wow.
Which sounds very, very worrying to me, but there you go. And also you can go to the hairdresser or to get your nails done.
So I don't mean to laugh. I know that's terribly, but I've got my mother-in-law living with me at the moment, and believe me, she's champing at the bit to get to the hairdresser, so I do understand that. But again, I mean, so they haven't gone down the route of only 2 people, and I mean, that's I haven't heard that from other places in Europe.
There are, I mean, social distancing is supposed to be maintained. So if you're outside with anybody other than a close family member you live with, you must have 1.5 meters distance between you. We are allowed out for exercise.
Great.
I've been taking very, very strong advantage of that and encouraging my colleagues to do the same.
Yeah.
A lot of running, a lot of walking. I mean, thankfully, it's been sunny weather here, which has been great. Although cold.
Yeah.
Woke up on the 1st of April and it was -2.
No way, was it really? Gosh, that is really cold for this time of year.
That is cold for April. So that's been, that's fine. I mean, there are remarkably few limitations, honestly speaking. I think Hungarians are reasonably disciplined, so we're all doing fine. A lot of food delivery services are operating, which is great. In terms of, I've got some statistics for you of where we are right now. As of this morning, there are 623 cases, of which 43 are confirmed fully recovered and 26 sadly deceased. It's a relatively small number. So one must assume that the other 550 or so are still either have symptoms, undergoing treatment, and so on.
Yeah, and I'm not out the other side yet. So those are relatively low numbers. And again, so proportionate to the population, what is the population of Hungary, roughly?
About 9.8 million.
Okay, so it's still very, those are small figures. And obviously, maybe that's why the restrictions at this point are still quite lax.
The borders were closed pretty successfully, pretty strictly. Not the 16th, on the 23rd of March, if I think back. And it was quite tough because they issued a decree which stated that Hungarians, anybody with Hungarian family, which it turned out included anybody who's not a resident. So we had an Australian citizen who was not a resident of Hungary, but his family were Hungarian citizens, and he was allowed to fly in even though he was not a resident. In the normal circumstances, though, it was only people who held a particular type of card, which is called a permanent residence card, which is an extremely rare card. Only a very, very small percentage of EU citizens hold that, because frankly, the regular registration card and address card, which EU citizens are issued with, was considered to be permanent.
Right.
So therefore, it came as a big shock to us all, and there was 2 or 3 sort of days of frantic sort of decision of back and forth. The decree has not been modified; it still states what it did originally, but via UK and Hungary, so the UK government's social media page, we were told about 3 days later that yes, UK citizens would be allowed in if they held the regular registration card and address card. But this was basically a discretionary matter by the Budapest police force. So they were given the jurisdiction over this particular matter. But then we had a senior HR director whose husband was in Bulgaria, and we struggled to get confirmation that he, and obviously technically UK citizens are no longer EU citizens, so therefore he would. So I don't see why they would get privileged sort of status over an existing EU citizen. It's really difficult because these folk are obviously taxpayers for the most part. They may have family members who are here in Hungary. So we've been dealing with quite a few inquiries of that nature, of families who've been split up for one reason or another. That's challenging. There's not much we've been able to do to help. And obviously at first people were being allowed onto flights and then getting stuck sort of at the airport. There were a few people who were in there sort of sleeping overnight, just being stuck there for a couple of days.
Wow.
So it was quite challenging.
I can imagine, but again, the fantastic responses that we've been hearing about all across our industry. This is such vital information that you're holding and that you're able to distribute to people. I guess what must be frustrating is if it's changing all the time or you don't know how things are being implemented. Is that something that, are you used to that in Hungary? Is that something that's part of the bureaucracy, or is this just not reacting fast enough to a crisis?
It's not untypical, to be honest. I'm getting updates from other countries in the region, and there seems to be a very, very clear message coming out as to who can do what. I just saw one this morning or yesterday from Slovakia, making it very, very clear for those, because the immigration authorities are closed there. So what happens if your permit's going to expire? What happens if you're stuck here and you don't have a permit because you never applied for one? You can no longer apply or have your permit renewed because the authorities are closed, or in Hungary, they're dealing only with the most urgent cases.
Okay.
And it was very hard for us to get an answer as to what most urgent means. It's also interesting in Hungary that the positive side effect of this crisis is that they were in the process of digitizing application processes. A lot of things were going online, but in a rather Hungarian way, you still had to bring all of the hard copies to the immigration office in person. Okay. And so it only meant that really you'd pre-submitted a bunch of documentation, which probably eased the processing, application processing situation for the staff at the authority. But of course now, they've streamlined that so that they are allowing applications to take place, and there's only the biometric data requirements where digital photograph, fingerprints that are required for non-EU citizens that are still taking place at the immigration authority, but strictly by appointment only. Okay. So there's no queuing, obviously, because be very, very hard to have a big, long queue and then maintain social distancing and so on.
Yeah, exactly. These are some of the things that's been so interesting. I was talking to Marie O'Neill and Aidan Hopkins in Dubai, and they were saying that basically the Dubai government just went, everyone's visas are extended. If you're stuck or if you're unemployed, because you can't be unemployed, your visa is then irrelevant. For the time being, it's just all automatically renewed, which is a simple way of dealing with it, I guess.
I think that's probably going to be the case as well. Yeah. That rather than issuing a further decree or a document stating what the situation is, there'll just be simple pragmatism.
Yeah.
So at the end of the crisis period, whenever that comes, at the moment for us, by the way, it is until the 11th.
Okay, right.
Which is Saturday, which is Easter Saturday.
Yeah.
And on Wednesday, the government will issue a statement as to whether that's going to be extended. Yeah. I think it's fair to assume that it will be.
I think it's fairly certain, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I forgot to mention one of the reasons why I'm not saying I question the numbers, but there isn't extensive testing yet in Hungary. Right. So as I see in the UK, there is a plan to do mass testing.
Yeah.
That needs to happen here as well. Obviously, for one reason, and this is just my opinion, if you find all the people that have the antibodies that have had it and have been asymptomatic,
absolutely,
you can start to actually. I heard a rumor that there might be some kind of global ID system, whether it be a wristband or something whereby you could identify people who now have the antibodies, and therefore the chances of them being, reinfected are extraordinarily low.
Yeah.
And those people can potentially help out with other things. I don't know.
Exactly. This is funny. It's exactly the conversation. I read a really interesting article published in The Week last week, which was a group of academics at Oxford University linked to one of the big teaching hospitals, had said that, that's why this test is so vital, because by their estimates, they reckon that about 50% of the population already in the UK are carrying those antibodies, which would mean you can divert resources. If I knew I had the antibodies, I could go and volunteer in hospital. I could go and volunteer in a care. And there are things we could all do for the people that are the most vulnerable. So you're right. This is the key now, isn't it? I mean, everyone's saying this.
Yeah. To find out where we all stand.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Transparency is very, very key. And if there was a way, I've no idea how the testing would work. Right now, everybody seems to be focused more on getting masks and wearing masks. Are people wearing masks in the street in the UK?
It's been so long since I've been out. No, I mean, yes, certainly you do see pictures of people on the tube, definitely. Problem is, nobody can get them. So people are improvising. There was a hilarious meme that went around. I'll show it to you later. But yes, people are improvising. They're making them out of wet wipes, and but it's like I say, it's very difficult to tell here. I don't live in a city, so we're not seeing that sort of the response of the larger population. I guess. I mean, what are you seeing in Budapest? Budapest is a big city.
Yeah, I mean, mask wearing is pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if you go to the supermarket, they certainly appreciate if you're wearing a mask.
Okay.
The staff at the checkout often aren't, but they are wearing rubber gloves.
Yes.
There's also a bit of try to avoid using cash.
Good point.
Because unless you've laundered your money in the literal sense,
literally laundered your money. Very good.
Then. I'm sort of setting that up as a secondary business, but
it's a real money laundering. So listen, tell me, how was it? When the ban came in, how was it transitioning your business and your teams to this new normal, to working from home? Was that possible? Do you still have people office based?
Right. Well, I mean, thankfully, we not necessarily intentionally. I mean, we'd exceeded the capacity of our office space quite a while ago, and it was getting loud and boisterous, and we'd implemented a working from home program already. So every member of staff had that capacity, and so there wasn't a great deal of work required to make that possible for everybody. So that was the first one. So now we run a skeleton staff. So I'm on duty today.
Okay.
We do occasionally have document delivery still to the office. We get some post, obviously, that kind of thing, and the occasional landline phone call. So we're all working. So we have one or two members of staff in the office every day.
Okay.
It's interesting, actually. There are those people that just enjoy the opportunity to get out.
I completely get that.
So that's fine. And obviously, within the office, if there's only two people, maintaining distance is easy enough.
Yeah.
So we were in a very, very fortunate situation that we were having a bumper year so far.
Okay.
So we had a great deal of work so I talk a lot about the pipeline, and this is where, I don't know if everybody else is thinking in the same way, but I thought I'd share a little bit about what my planning is for the inevitable. Yeah. So I have a pipeline, and there's going to be a hole in that pipeline. If I'm mixing my metaphors, I apologize. So what I'm keeping a very close eye on is the amount of work that's ongoing. So clearly what's happening at the moment is we invoice on a weekly basis. Thursday is invoicing day, so I'm very, very much focused on what's going on Thursday afternoon, waiting for that email from our finance manager. How much have we invoiced? Then it's a case of, then I'm monitoring how much new work is coming in, how many new authorizations are coming in. Because remarkably, there are still some jobs, not a lot, but it tends to be permit extensions, which we can still do, as I mentioned, lease contract renewals, the occasional departure service. Not quite sure how people are flying out, but they're
going. Yeah.
I check the airport's website occasionally, and yes, indeed, there are planes coming in and out. Whether there can't be many people on them, they may be expensive. I haven't checked the price, but there are flights. So we've got some limited amount of work, and obviously the key thing right now is also for us is getting the work that we can finish finished.
Yeah.
We're also using our internal computer system to mark those cases that are on hold. So I can get a view as a manager to see like, okay, what are we doing? What are we active at? I'm also obviously getting feedback from the staff. This is where it gets very difficult. I'm trying to be very positive with them and say, look, your job's not in jeopardy, but I need honesty. I need full disclosure. The tendency will be to say, oh, no, I'm very busy. Okay. What are you busy with?
With what? Yeah.
Because the list of jobs you've got ongoing is in terms of, it's pretty limited in terms of the cases that are still live. What we've implemented right now is paid leave.
Okay.
So the positive of this is that I've spoken to several RMCs, and the people I'm speaking to are saying, hey, their clients are not cancelling these relocations. They're just postponing them.
Right.
So the vast majority of work will come.
Yeah.
And so actually, and it's probably gonna kick in June, July.
Yeah, I would say so. I have my wooden ruler, touch wood. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then if that's the case, all the other work that we haven't yet been authorized for will have backed up as well. So we're preparing for a very, very bumper summer.
Yeah.
This is the plan that we have. So therefore, I'm kind of enforcing some leave, but paid leave, which it's hardly the best holiday in the world.
Well, it's a staycation, put it that way.
Right, yeah, but at least it's something.
Exactly.
And then I think worst case scenario, we would be looking at reducing hours. I've had some very brave volunteers who've offered to go on unpaid leave.
Oh, that's really nice.
For a month.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And obviously we have different people with different circumstances. We've got families with kids at home from school who are taking on additional.
Are the schools closed?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
All closed. So therefore it's online, or parents have been given, well, frankly, they're having to become teachers.
Yeah.
And if they've got a full-time job, obviously our staff is split, I think, fairly evenly between male and female. But obviously we do have both male and female staff with kids at home. So there are other responsibilities there. So we're seeing what happens. The challenge for us is that there is no government support whatsoever.
That was my next question. So you're not getting any tax breaks, lending incentives, mortgage breaks, nothing at all?
No. The relocation industry doesn't really exist, and we're considered, other in terms of the Hungarian taxation system. The services that we deliver are not hospitality, and they're not tourism. So we're not getting any special breaks at all.
So those are the only two sectors that currently are getting any kind of assistance?
That I'm aware of, yes. So we're not in that, we're not in any category that we would be given benefits. Banks have been instructed to have a moratorium on mortgage and loan repayments.
Okay.
As a company, the only thing we've got as a moratorium is interest on our overdraft, which right now we're not using, but we to be honest, that overdraft was intended for working with RMCs, making payments.
Yes, yeah, sure.
Which obviously we don't need it for that right now, and so we can save it and we can have that in a sort of abeyance just in case as a backup plan for what I'm talking about, the whole. So yeah. I'm trying to look at what costs we can avoid. Obviously things like we fund public transport passes for all the staff members. That's gone.
No. Yeah,
so obviously that's not going to happen in April, and obviously any other ways in which we can cut costs. That's definitely what's taking place right now, and we're also using the time as efficiently as we can. So tidying up files. We are implementing a new computer system.
Oh, okay.
So after 11 years of using a bespoke system that we had developed for us, we are moving to a system which is out there on the market.
Uh-huh.
We are hopefully going to go live with that system and implement it. At the moment, we're in the process of inputting contracts into that system. So I've got a coordination team they've got some spare time on their hands, and that's what they're doing so that we can get the system ready so that when we go live, we're back.
It's seamless.
That's done, because frankly, we were struggling to do that because we were so busy.
Yeah.
And I'm also seeing quite a lot of RFPs coming out.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, work is... You're right. It goes back to what you said before. This is a hiatus. It's not a stop. It's a temporary hiatus. So, that's interesting. So, I mean, again, from the point of view of implementing the system, this is a great time to do that, because you can all be testing and finding any bugs and not worrying about the impact on the greater company. So that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
We can see it as being given the gift of time.
Yeah. That's the only way to look at it.
I mean, yeah. And by the way, the last point with regard to, I know you mentioned to me before we started the official interview, cash flow. Cash flow is going to be absolutely key. So, and it like it or not, we're ramping up our, let's say, cash. I'm forgotten the word. Debt collection, for one polite phrase.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So overdue invoices? No. So I would make a plea to all. I know that it's not always like that, but in the end, the trickle tends to be from the larger companies down to the smaller companies. Within our organization, we have members who are 2-3 person organizations, and they live far more hand to mouth than perhaps we do. So if they're not getting paid, they may not be able to pay their salaries or their consultants' income. So therefore, we're really pushing that wherever possible, the larger partners that we have, at least pay us on time.
Yeah.
I know that everybody's going through cash flow difficulties at the same time, but the smaller the organization, in my opinion, the greater the immediate risk.
Yeah.
Of course, larger organizations in the long term, they have a larger cost base, they can suffer too. But the fundamental rule right now, I think, has to be, I don't care, everybody should pay each other what they owe.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's obviously something as an organisation within the mobility industry. Actually, I was going to say to you, we have an interview scheduled on Monday with the new CEO of WERC and TAD and Steve Crine from CERC. And that's one of the things that we'll be talking about as the organisations, that, we can somehow work, as we have done, as for many years, trying to bridge those communications within the supply chain and get that message across. Because as you just said, when this hiatus comes to an end, the demand for mobility is going to be hard and it's going to be fast. And the teams need to be in place, as they are now, to be able to handle that demand. So it's in no one's best interests for people not to be getting paid.
Absolutely. I mean, there are, I know that in the UK and several other countries, even in this region, there is an opportunity for some kind of government support.
There is.
For a partial salary to be supported by the government. I'm hearing 60%, 80%, and that's great. I mean, I think another point here is the banks. Without wishing to be political in any way, shape, or form, the banks were bailed out in 2008. And if you watch a movie called The Big Short, it's on Netflix. You can watch it. You can learn all about what happened.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people at fault there, and it was an enormous bailout.
Absolutely.
And now I think with the ridiculously low interest rates that we have, the opportunity for a stable business that's suffering a temporary hole in its cash flow, hopefully would be treated favorably by the banks as well, regardless of where they are in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's very difficult we all thought after 2008 that things would change within the banking system, and that the world governments would have more control over how that was going to play out. It hasn't happened that way, but it has to, and certainly within the UK, the Bank of England is making very strong noises about, banks have to. I mean, it was very interesting. I was talking to Rob Burns in Chicago, Iowa Global, and he was saying that the entire burden for support in the US has fallen on the banking system. It's the government and the Federal Reserve saying, come on, the Federal Reserve is pumping money out, there's quantitative easing going on. It's up to you now to make loans attractive so that people can keep staff going. And he said, and that's good because it's government interfering with the banking system. But on the other hand, he said, I don't want to come out of this with a whacking rate loan because I don't want to suck anybody. So, very, very tough decisions.
It is tough. Yeah, and it's very, very hard as a manager, because you can either be completely democratic. Let's imagine that we get to a point where you say, okay, I'm going to have to reduce the hours of everybody. So, okay, we do it across the board, regardless, because you might have some members of staff are still quite busy.
Yes, exactly.
Then others are hardly working at all. So do you then be selective, or are you completely egalitarian and reduce everybody's hours? Or do you accept the noble volunteer offers that you get from those people that say, hey, I've got some savings, I can afford to take a month off unpaid, which, I mean, is incredibly selfless and makes me quite emotional, actually, when I hear things like that. And I'll remember these offers later.
Absolutely. I mean, for sure. And, I think that's really interesting that you say that, because there have been just so many examples of that. I mean, not just from the people like you that I've been talking to. Susanna Bourne said the same thing about her team in Spain, that the kindness that people are showing, because they love what they do, they love the people that they work with, they love the company, they love this industry. And they want to, this is temporary, we'll get back to it. I want to have my job when because I love doing what I do. And even from the point of view of, the response for us at Euro has been the same. So there's great kindness being shown throughout this. And that's one of those, because my next question was going to be, what's keeping you positive? That's one of the things that's been keeping me positive, is that kindness that's been shown.
I feel positive that, I don't think my company's going to collapse, because I think we're okay. I think we've got the cash flow.
Yeah.
I'm being very shouty with some people about paying us.
Okay.
But that's only because I want to protect my family, and my family is my team.
Yeah.
So therefore, yeah, I'm gonna work and do everything I can to make sure that they're still getting paid, they don't lose their jobs, and that and the positivity is that I honestly believe that the things I'm being told by the big RMCs that I've spoken to is true, because they're getting it direct from the big multinationals that we work for. So I think that a lot of the work that is still going to take place. So we have to survive for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
I look at the situation in China now. Okay, China, the lockdown was extreme.
Yes.
And it took 2 months. So how is it going to be similar for us? So I'm thinking, mid-March to mid-May, maybe we'll be, having some form of restart at that point.
Yeah.
It might be airports open, but 14-day compulsory quarantine when you arrive.
Something, yeah.
So we'll be selling a lot of temp accommodation.
Yes, certainly will. Yeah.
I don't know. I really honestly believe that it can't go on for much longer than that. I don't want to sound like Donald Trump in a million years and sort of saying we've got to get back to work.
But we do.
Because flattening the curve is the key thing here.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Stay at home.
Yeah. True.
Socially isolate.
Yeah.
Do all of these things, because it will be better later.
Yes.
But there has to be an end.
There has to be an end in sight. And I think, going back to one of the points you made at the very beginning and when we were talking earlier, the testing is the key. I think more and more governments are now coming to that conclusion. We need to know who's carrying the antibodies, so that a semblance of normality can start. I was talking with Michelle Ramstoft, our president, who you know very well. She was saying yesterday in Denmark, they're already talking about reducing some of the restrictions just after Easter, because they are seeing that the restrictions they put in place are actually starting to work. I think in a bigger population like here in the UK, certainly in the US, it's going to be testing that's going to really change the speed of how we're all locked down for. But it's like you say, I mean, as you said about President Trump, this is not somebody whose opinion I take very seriously, but there is a point at which our political systems are going to have to make a decision about when we have to start again and what that means against the continuation of the pandemic. So, these are very tough decisions. You are making terribly tough decisions about your company. Politicians, and there are no easy answers. It's a cliche, but it's true.
Come on, Dom, you and I should be able to fix it.
We should be able to fix it, it's true.
But isn't it bizarre that you and I are basically sat here talking about a global pandemic and how we might resolve it?
I think it's crazy, but also what's even more crazy to me is, as we've become kind of slightly used to the situation. It's even 2 weeks ago, the phrase global pandemic, certainly a month ago, would be something unimaginable, just unimaginable, and now here we are.
Right.
It's extraordinary, and I know everyone's feeling the same way, so we've got to bear up. So how are you guys personally? Are you coping with having your lives curtailed to this extent?
Absolutely, yeah, we're doing really well. Watching a lot of backdated things.
Yes.
Just discovered that there are 2 series of UK MasterChef we haven't seen that are on YouTube.
Brilliant.
Highly recommend watching those.
Excellent. Have you signed up for BritBox yet? That's brilliant.
Sorry, which one?
BritBox. It's all the shows from the BBC and ITV all in one subscription service. It's really good.
Oh, I have to check if that's available abroad.
I think it is. I think they marketed it for America first. It's just come on here.
Ooh,
but have a look. Yeah, it's really good.
I will.
Good tip,
and yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the exercising thing. I've run and walked something like 150 kilometers since the 16th of March.
Wow. I know.
It's incredible.
It's great. This is the one thing we're allowed to walk, 2 people, safe distance. And I live in a village, so we do a nice 6K walk every evening. So that is a blessing. That is a real blessing, I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this is a group of friends of ours. There's it's like basically 4 households. One lady lost her job. She was managing editor of a tourism magazine.
Oh, gosh.
She said, right, I'm going to cook for my family every day. And I can cook for 10 people. It's more or less the same as cooking for 3. So she said, right, I'm going to cook a meal every day. And I'm going to use my opportunity for exercise by becoming a bicycle courier of the meal I've made.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
And then Edith, so my wife, she said, right, well, I'm going to she loves baking. So she's now gone mad we've had lemon biscuits, chocolate chip cookies, and now yesterday was banana bread.
Wow.
So then she's just, so when the lady courier arrives with the lunch food, she then hands over the previous day's baked products. And then, and as far as I'm aware, we're not breaking any quarantine.
No.
So we keep the distance when our friend delivers the lunch, and we're all getting a home cooked meal. Another colleague of mine told me, he's married, 2 children, and he said he was also volunteering that he would reduce his hours or maybe even take a suspension of his employment for a little while, unpaid leave or whatever. He said because he's not spending money.
I know. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I mean, he's very fortunate that he owns his own home, so he's got no mortgage, no rent.
Right.
And beyond that, I mean, he's got some minor utility bills. We're at that lovely time of year when it's getting a little warmer.
Yeah.
No heating, no aircon, and also he basically is just feeding his family, and that's it.
It's extraordinary. We've had exactly the same conversations, and I mean that's something which is so interesting. I tell you, there's something that just occurred to me when you were talking about the food and the person making it. I talked to Maria Curie in Athens earlier this week, and she made a great point. She said in Greece today, she said the biggest need we have for the face masks is to stop putting food in our mouths because we're all eating so much, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of memes going around about weight gain.
Yes.
The bikini bodies in the summer are not going to be not the way that they're supposed to be. Apparently.
It's true. It's very true. Listen, Stuart, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to catch up. It really has. It's been far too long. I'd love to come back to you in a few weeks' time and see where we are then as things start to change. That would be brilliant. So, like I say, thank you so much. It's been a real treat.
Thank you, Dom.
Stay well, stay safe, stay healthy. And
you too.
And the same to your teams. It's really been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Take care.